What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. High risk early round running backs. This is probably one of the most important videos of the offseason because your early round running back selections are going to make or break your season, right? It's as simple as that. You can miss in the middle and the late rounds, but if you screw up these early picks, you're putting yourself way behind. Before we start, gotta shout out the website. Even if you don't want to see all of the risk scores, the rankings, sleepers, busts, targets, there's still a bunch of free data over there that I guarantee is going to help you learn about players or at least be fun to look at. So it's thefantasyfootballadvice.com if you want to check that out. So let's start things off with the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was which quarterback had the longest average time in the pocket. The answer was Kirk Cousins. Winner is Adrian Moore. I believe his third win, which should take him over the lead from IKA8. Today's stat: which running back had the most targets inside the 5-yard line? All right, let's see who the riskiest early round running backs are and what I think about them. So just like with the wide receiver video, if I say a running back ranks 30th here, that means 30th safest. So 29 running backs are safer than them. Just want to make that clear. So starting off, we have Josh Jacobs, ranks as the 35th safest running back. Jacobs gets this grade for a number of different factors. It's not one big issue that makes him risky. It's just a bunch of smaller things. He does have elevated injury risk. His max touches in college was only 140, and then he did miss 3 games with a shoulder injury last season in his rookie year. I'm in no way saying he can't stay healthy, just that we haven't seen it over a full season with a big workload, so the risk has to go up, right? Just has to. The second issue is the offense. The Raiders ranked 24th in points per game and plays per game last season. That's obviously always a downgrade for running backs, lowering their floor and their ceiling. Now, both of these could go up. They could score more points, they could get more or run more plays per game, I guess, but we have no reason to believe they'll go up a lot. Maybe they jump to like 18th, 19th, 20th, but we have no reason to believe they're all of a sudden going to be a top 10 scoring offense. So you have to think that's still going to add a little bit of risk. The final point is probably the most important one though, and that's the receptions. If he was going in like the 4th or the 5th round, then we probably wouldn't care too much about the targets, right? Because he's going to get so much work on the ground. He has the upside for the targets. He should be getting goal line. We wouldn't be concerned. But he's going in the late 1st round, and to return that sort of value, he's either going to need a lot of touchdowns or a good amount of receptions. And the problem is they refused to use him in the passing game last year. And then what do they do in the offseason? They give Jalen Richard an extension. They sign Devontae Booker. They draft Lynn Bowden. None of those players should be used over Jacobs on 3rd downs, but they probably will be. And that's concerning. So 35th isn't the end of the world. It's not something that I'm avoiding at all costs because I'm okay assuming some sort of risk. It's not preferable in the 1st round, but some sort of risk if someone has top 5 upside. And if they use him in the passing game, then he absolutely could finish in the top 5, even the top 3. So I do still have him as a target because of that upside. But you need to be cognizant of the fact that he is a bit risky. And so with your 2nd, 3rd, 4th round picks, you're going to need to lean on players that are much safer. So if you take Jacobs, make sure you're just 100% confident in all of your next picks. Do not be picking other risky players on top of that, because then you're bound to have a bust or two. Next, we have David Johnson comes in as the 42nd safest running back. And basically all of the risk here comes from changing teams, so we don't know exactly what the workload is going to be, and the injuries. He's missed 18 games since 2017 with ankle, back, and wrist injuries, and realistically, he has missed more than that, right? Because he was active in a number of those games last year, but he was never going to get more than like 2 snaps. DJ is one of the most interesting decision points this season, in my opinion, because of how polarizing of a player he is. You've got people who think he's dust, that he's just absolutely done, no chance he's ever good again. And then you've got people on the other side who are like, nah, he's actually really good, and I think he's got a few years left. I tend to fall somewhere in the middle of those takes. It's fairly clear that he hasn't peaked since 2016. He probably will never get back to that status, I guess. But that doesn't mean that he can't be useful in fantasy, right? He doesn't need to be at his peak. He can be a little bit below his peak and still be great. Last season, he averaged 15 and a half fantasy points per game in the 6 weeks before he injured the ankle, which is mid to low end running back one production. Now, I get, and you need to get, that that was mostly volume based since he wasn't all that great on the ground. He was just getting a lot of touches. But you can't deny that he was great as a receiver, and he always has been. So we should expect that to continue. And if that's the case, I know I said they have risk that, or he has risk that we don't know how they'll be using him. But if we know he's a great receiving back, and we know the history the Texans have shown with running backs already not being efficient on the ground, we should expect them to use him exactly like they did Carlos Hyde last season, except with a good chunk more work in the receiving game. And that sort of volume should pretty easily bring him in, even if he's not efficient, as a mid to low end running back 2, as long as he stays healthy. So I currently have him as the running back 18, 6 spots above ADP, 2 spots above ECR, and I do think that is the correct spot to draft him at. So if you want to take him in that range, then I am more than okay with it. If he starts going earlier than that, maybe gets a little bit more hype into end of August, then I would personally start to pump the brakes. Aaron Jones is next up, and he ranks as the 45th safest running back, and he gets that ranking because of injury and market share concerns. The injuries have been pretty well documented, although he was mostly healthy last season, so I'm sure people will forget about the injuries, but they were why he was going in the 3rd round last season. They were why he could not jump into the 2nd, because everyone was concerned that he can't stay healthy. He has injured the knee multiple times, and then last season, like I said, he injured the shoulder. This year, the injury risk will likely go down, but that's just because he's going to see less volume. They drafted A.J. Dillon because they wanted to rotate 3 running backs in a committee. And Dillon's 6 foot 250, so he's obviously going to be used in some goal line situations, right? They're not just going to draft a running back in the 2nd round and then have him ride the bench. They're going to use him. So you have a running back who was going in the 3rd round, which was a really good ADP and one that we recommended targeting, but then gets extremely lucky with touchdowns and has the starting running back get injured. You have to remember that. You look at the end of season totals for receptions for Aaron Jones. That's not what we should expect going forward, because Adams was hurt for a good chunk last year, and that's when Jones loaded up a ton of receptions because they were using him because they didn't have anyone else to throw to. But over a full season, we should not be expecting that. So you've got both of these things, and now he costs you an early 2nd round pick, even though there's now more competition for touches and touchdowns. That's what we call paying for last season's efficiency, and it's something that we always look to avoid. So I can't recommend targeting him at his current ADP because the injury and volume risk are just too high. The final running back we'll go over today is Leonard Fournette. Comes in as the 48th safest running back for the exact same reasons as Jones, but then also being part of a worse offense, right? Because Jones is on the Packers. He does have a chance to repeat those touchdowns. Fournette is on the Jags, and they're not that great of an offense. Fournette has, of course, injured his ankle multiple times, his quad, hamstring, neck. His hyper efficiency has also been highlighted numerous times on this channel, but he saved his value last season with the receptions. Any running back getting his workload on the ground plus 100 targets is going to be valuable. Doesn't matter how inefficient they end up being. And that's how he was able to finish 11th in points per game. The thing is, he was really bad on those targets last season. Averaged just 5.2 yards per target and ranked 181st out of 199 running backs in fantasy points per target. So what do they do in the offseason? Well, Jay Gruden goes out, brings in his old friend Chris Thompson. Thompson has over 200 receptions over the last 5 seasons with Jay Gruden, and it would be absolutely shocking if they did not use him on 3rd downs. And realistically, The Jags are going to figure it out at some point. They can't just keep using Fournette if they want to win. Shout out to Warren Sharp for this stat. On 75 first down runs in the first half last season, Fournette averaged 2.7 yards per carry, had a pathetic 25% success rate, negative 16.4 expected points added, and broke 4 tackles, which ranked last among qualified running backs. Even in non-obvious run situations, he was dreadful. They were trying to trade him in the offseason, but nobody wanted him. I just don't see how they could possibly continue to feature him this season unless they're actively trying to lose, and I don't think that they are. So I will not be targeting him, and I don't think you should as well. So those are some of the riskiest running backs in the early rounds and my thoughts on them. If you want to see the full risk grades on every single player, you can do that at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But that's the end of this one. Hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new? Thanks for watching.